Welcome to another episode of the 4 Pillars of Health with Kevin Davis. Today we're going to talk about all things CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. If you don't know me, my name is Kevin Davis and I'm an online health coach. I help guys lose weight, gain muscle, and optimize their health. Today we're going to talk about a CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitor. We're going to talk about some of the benefits from wearing one. We're going to talk about some of the insights that I've had from wearing one myself, and then what you need to look for if you do decide to wear a continuous glucose monitor. What are some of the good things and bad things? So let's get started. Continuous glucose monitor. It's a simple device. It's like a button. If you've ever seen someone wearing one, it's a little bit bigger than like a quarter. And what it is you just put it on the back of your triceps, on the back of your arm here. Some people put it on their abdomen, but probably most people put it on the back of their arm. And they wear this, depending on which model that you use, from anywhere from 10 to 14 days. Now, a lot of people say, well, this is going to hurt. Believe me, if you've ever got your finger stuck as far as getting your blood sugar, that hurts a lot worse than putting one of these on. It is a simple process. And what it is when you attach it to your arm, there's a little needle that goes in and there's a filament that overlays it, and it goes into your interstitial fluid. So it doesn't actually go into your bloodstream. It's not checking your blood glucose. It's checking your glucose in the interstitial fluid. Now, the newer models are calibrated so that when they get a reading of the glucose in the interstitial fluid, which is just a fluid that's around all the cells, it is calibrated to what that would be as far as your blood sugar. So when you're wearing one of these, you usually have an app on your phone, and you're able to see what your blood sugar is 24. It's really good because you're able to look back and see what it does during the night. So we're going to talk about that. You're going to be able to talk about what it does during the day, especially if you're having stressful times after you eat, those type of things, which we're going to discuss here in a second. So it's a very good tool to use. It was initially used for people with diabetes, specifically with taking insulin. That's how it started. People are taking insulin so that they're able to see what their blood sugar is, so they can adjust their medication. So it was a great thing to use during that time. But now we've kind of expanded that. We're able to hopefully offer this to people who are, type 2 diabetics, or if you're not even a diabetic like myself, using this to see what does your health look like. So a lot of people ask, well, how much does it cost? Well, it depends. Some insurances will pay for it, some won't. Most of them now will pay for it if you take insulin. It's pretty much across the board. If you're a type 2 diabetes where you don't take insulin, if you've had 2 low blood sugars, like hypoglycemic episodes, within the last 6 months, most insurances will cover it. If you do not fit those criteria, then you're out of luck because your insurance doesn't cover it. Now, obviously, I'm not diabetic, as you know, but I pay for it out of pocket, and I'm able to get mine, and I use it because I know it's such a valuable tool for my health. A lot of people, and this includes some people in the medical community, think that wearing a CGM, if you're not diabetic, is a waste of time. It doesn't give you information. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think it does wonderful information, and we're going to talk about 9 things here that it does to help even if you're not diabetic. If you are diabetic, you really need to ask your provider to get you one and make sure that they know what to look for as far as the readings and things like that to help you decipher whether it's good or bad, and we'll go over those in just a second. But if you're not diabetic, and I think these are the reasons why it really helps, and it also helps the diabetic in some of these. Number 1, you get better mental performance. People who have less variability in their blood sugars, meaning goes highs and lows and things like that, a lot depends on your stress and your eating and your sleep and things like that. Those are the things that we're able to control better. There's studies been shown that people who control their blood sugars, you don't have the highs and the lows. You have less variability. It's more like a straight line right across with the bumps up when you eat it. They have less anxiety. So it helps with better mental performance. Number 2, better physical performance. Whether it would be some kind of activity, whether it be, getting out, working around the house, lifting weights, running, some kind of sports, those type of things. If you're able to control your blood sugar, you're going to be able to perform better. Now, a lot of times, and we're going to talk about this in a second, sometimes certain activities can make it go higher, and that's normal. That's just your body releasing sugar, stored sugar from your liver, as far as like giving you energy during those short bursts of intense activities. Third thing it does is it promotes healthy behavioral changes. And what I mean by that, like when I wear my CGM, and most of my patients and my clients as well too, when they wear a CGM, they automatically eat differently because it's in the back of their mind. They know whatever they're going to eat is going to show up on their continuous glucose monitor. So when they look on their app, let's say they had some, for me, it was Crunch Munch. Crunch Munch really spiked my sugar. And I know exactly now that I don't need to have that. But now it's changed my behavior because if I have a box of Crunch Munch in front of me, my first thought is, what is it going to do to my blood sugar? So if, like with you, if you're wearing one, it's going to change your behaviors. It automatically does. And it's amazing how that works because, all the time we want to perform better. We want good numbers. Think about your cholesterol. You may not do a whole lot about it, but you're worried about it because it's high or low, whatever it may be. Now, if you're diabetic, there's something called a hemoglobin A1C, which is the average of your blood sugar over the last 3 or 4 months. That can be high, but what it doesn't tell you is what your blood sugars does, especially in response to foods. So when you have a high hemoglobin A1C, you don't know, is it from the food that you're eating? Is it stress? Is it sleep problems and things like that? So this gives you a little bit more detailed minute-to-minute readings because you're able to see that on your app, and it changes your behavior because if you can't consistently see like numbers high in the afternoon when you're having some anxiety at work or stress, that's causing issues. Then you can do something specifically for that. Fourth thing that I like about it is it identifies individual responses to food. I find this really amazing that some people can eat one thing or two people can eat the same thing and have different glucose response. Now, it could be something that's all the time with both those two people, or it could be because one did some activity before, one was fasting, one did, so there's a lot of variability with that. But you're going to be able to see that what specifically foods make yours go up. Like for me, I mentioned Crunch Munch. That makes my sugar go really high. The other thing that made mine go really high was eating a Chinese buffet. Now, I didn't have rice, I didn't have noodles. It was just the sauces on the meats that I ate. The sugar in that made my blood sugar go up. So I think twice about going to a buffet because, I know what it's going to do to my blood sugar. We did experiment, Danae and I, as my wife, when we went to Hilton Head one time. On the way down, we ate at Chick-fil-A. We just had the breaded patty. My blood sugar went up to like 1, which is a little bit higher than what mine normally does. Compared to me eating like at the deli here in our hometown at the grocery store, my blood sugar eating that with chicken strips only went up to 100. And at the Mexican restaurant that we eat at with chicken and cheese, I only went up to 100. So I know there's probably some sugar in the Chick-fil-A breading that caused my blood sugar to go up. So I've made some adjustments to that. I made some behavioral changes to that. And as a side note, I think about, okay, if I'm eating bread with the Chick-fil-A patty, I'm eating French fries, I have a regular Coke, and I have a milkshake, man, I just wonder what my blood sugar would do. Maybe I'll do that experiment sometime. Fifth thing, it uncovers potential conditions that are getting in the way of you losing weight and optimizing your health. And what I mean by that is you may be struggling. You may be failing your diet. You may be, exercising, but you're just not losing weight. And I've seen this with some of my clients is we noticed that their blood sugar spiked during the nighttime. And what happened was they were having sleep apnea episodes. So they finally got a sleep study, start wearing a CPAP, and those got corrected and they started losing some weight at that time. Not only that, but they felt better. So that's optimizing your health. So that was just from looking at your blood sugars throughout the night on a continuous glucose monitor. So I think it was really, really interesting that happened. I had a lady that I was coaching as well too, and there was at one point where she was struggling too, and she says that, I asked her about stress and all, we go through all the things that we talk about with the 4 pillars of health. She says no, she's not stressed and things like that. She wore a glucose monitor, and we noticed during the daytimes, at certain times when she was doing things, her blood sugar went up, and that was a result of the stress. Stress leads to increased cortisol, which increases glucose, which increases insulin, which is your fat storage hormone. So there's a cascade of effects there. So that was very interesting too. Number 6, it reduces cravings, and that goes back to having a normalized blood sugar when you're not having highs and lows. So if you're able to have a steady state blood sugar, now it's going to go up some and down some. It's not going to be a straight line across, but we don't want it to go really high. We don't want it to go really low. And, if you're a client, we can talk about what the highs and lows is on that, but it does reduce cravings if you're able to stabilize your blood sugar. And number 7, you learn strategies to stabilize stabilize your blood sugar. You'll find that if you're wearing a continuous glucose monitor, and I encourage people to do this, is to walk after they eat, for instance. And then the next day, don't walk after you eat and see what your blood sugar does. And what they usually find is if they're able to walk after they eat, their blood sugars actually get better. So your body's using up that sugar. Some people won't eat late at nighttime, and then notice a spike in their blood sugar during the night. Causes problems with their sleep. Therefore, we find a problem with the problem with sleep. It wasn't sleep apnea. It wasn't anything like that. They didn't need medicines for it. They just needed to quit eating late at nighttime. I've had also on the flip side of that, I've had some people have low blood sugars during the nighttime, and we've actually encouraged them to have a fatty protein snack before meals. So if this is individualized, you can't take all the things I'm talking about and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You don't know what the problem is. You got to figure out what the problem is and then treat it. And then the other thing, as far as like stable strategies to stabilize your blood sugar, is eating protein or vegetables first. You know, if you're eating protein or vegetables, the fiber from the vegetables, before you eat the carbohydrates or anything like that, you're going to have a more steady state blood sugar. So if you think about as far as America, you know, when we go to a steakhouse or something like that, first thing they do is bring us rolls. Worst mistake. You need to eat the salad first and then the meat, and then maybe if you want a roll, then have a roll, and it's going to stabilize your blood sugar much better. Number 8, you're going to identify metabolic dysfunction earlier. So a lot of times people come and they think they're healthy, you know, and we do some lab work. Let's just say, for instance, as an example, their insulin level is a little bit elevated. It's not optimal. And then we put a glucose monitor on them. And then we see that they do have a lot of variability in their blood sugars. Maybe they have some spikes. Maybe it's not going down as quickly, things like that. Then we start identifying, okay, are we telling people if you don't make some changes, this is where you're headed. So we're able to identify these things earlier so they don't go on years of causing damage to your body and therefore reducing your potential for chronic disease later on. And number 9, I think, provides accountability. It really does. Kind of like what we talked about before as far as behavioral changes. You know, you wear one of these or not wear one of these, and you come in and talk to me or something like that, and you say, well, my blood sugars are doing well. You know, I'm eating like I should, things like that. But when we look at your continuous glucose monitor, we see spikes. You know, I've had people come in spikes to 180. They're not diabetic, 180, 190. Still not the diabetic, quote, range, but still getting a lot higher than what we want. So it does provide accountability, because then we go back and say, what'd you eat that day? You know, have them log that kind of stuff. So they're able to identify those things. So they're accountable to themselves right then, but they're accountable to me later on. So focus on your glucose is great. And we talked about 9 things that I think is good for people who's not diabetic, even to wear a continuous glucose monitor. But let's just pick something like weight loss. Weight loss is something across the board most people want to have. And I see that a lot of people with my clients and my patients with that. So we can't just focus on glucose for your weight loss. You know, it could be other things. It could be your sleep problems. It could be stress. You know, obviously it could be your diet. You know, those type of things that you're doing. You may have normalized blood sugars, but those things aren't optimized. Then, you know, you're not going to get the results that you want. Maybe you have some gut dysbiosis. So if we're just focusing on weight loss, what we need to do is just tell everybody to smoke. Because, you know, everybody that smokes usually loses weight because they're doing that oral fixation. But we know that's not healthy. So we can't just focus on glucose. We got to focus on the whole person so that we can optimize their health, not just focus on getting the numbers. We want to get good results, and we want to do that in a healthy way. And I think with the reasons I just listed, those are the things I think is going to help you if you're struggling, or if you want to know more about your health or where you're at, like a baseline, then you're able to wear a continuous glucose monitor and you're able to get some feedback right away. So when you're talking about wearing a continuous glucose monitor, and it goes back to the people who maybe says, well, we don't need to wear a continuous glucose monitor if you're not diabetic, or if you're just taking pills, you don't really need to have a continuous glucose monitor. And again, I disagree there. Because studies have been shown that if you have frequent spikes in your blood sugar, and if you eat cookies and ice cream after dessert or after meals all the time, if you have snacks in the afternoon like jelly beans or something like that, if you have these frequent spikes, or if you have variability, meaning it's like a volatile stock market. You go up one day, down the next, up one day, and not only during the day, but during the day-to-day and also during the day. If you have those type of things, the spikes and the increased variability, it's associated with all-cause death mortality. And that's like cancer, cardiovascular disease. So we know from studies that if you have these frequent spikes and you have this frequent variability, it does cause some problems long term. And that's why I think it's important that we get this under control earlier so that we don't develop these chronic diseases. Now, some of the insights, I have 7 insights that I've had myself from wearing a continuous glucose monitor. Number 1, changes behavior. We talked about that. There's never been a study that shows that it changes behavior, but what I want you to do is just take a leap of faith here. And I want you to do that just from trusting me, from the things that I've seen for myself, I've seen for my clients, and I've seen for my patients. They do change their behavior. They start seeing these spikes in their blood sugars with certain foods, and they start making some behavioral changes. They start making behavioral changes, how much they sleep. They realize, hey, I'm not getting enough sleep. This is causing stress in my body, which increases the cortisol, increases the glucose, increases insulin. I'm not losing weight. Those are the reasons. So people start changing behaviors. It's like when you look at your cholesterol panel. If your cholesterol is really abnormal, then you start making changes because you see the numbers. These numbers are associated with heart disease, certain aspects of your cholesterol profile. These are associated with heart disease. If you don't correct these, you're going to have increased risk for heart disease. Same thing with this right here. If you see the spikes and you really understand that the spikes and the increased variability is associated with all-cause mortality, then you're going to make some changes. Number 2, not all foods affect every person the same. And I said this before, mine was Crunch Munch. I've had a lot of people that, when they have ice cream, their blood sugar goes really high. As an experiment, one time, I always like to do experiments because they're good and I can get by with them because I'm doing an experiment, is I had ice cream and chocolate chip cookies. My blood sugar didn't go over 130. It's amazing. I thought it was really, really high. When I ate Crunch Munch, it went up to 180 something. So you can see there's a big difference with that. Obviously, I'm not going to eat that all the time because I think things would change, but for that one time, it did not go as high as the Crunch Munch. Number 3, lowering your A1C. So even if you're not diabetic, and then again, A1C is your 3-month average on your blood sugar. Lowering your A1C is associated with lower all-cause mortality. Getting an A1C helps. I think it's a good marker to get as your average blood sugar over the last 3 or 4 months. But that's over a month's period of time. With a continuous glucose monitor, you're able to get feedback right away. So that's the limitation of getting the A1Cs. You don't know exactly when your blood sugar was going up. Number 4, a high intensity interval training increases my glucose. Now, if I go and do strength training, I do squats, I do bench press, I do deadlifts, those type of things, it doesn't really raise my blood glucose as much. But if I do some high intensity training, like if I do a 10 or 15 minute full body workout where I'm constantly on the go with intermittent rest within sets, that really makes my blood sugar go up. And I say really makes it go up. I mean, it goes up to like 120 or so. When I'm doing just the normal resistance strength training, it maybe go up to 110 at the most. So there's a little difference with that. Number 4, poor sleep. When I have poor sleep, my glucose is more variable the next day. Sometimes it's higher in the morning. And one of the things that I found is when you have high blood sugars, especially and then you have poor sleep, it leads to decreased discipline the next day. It's amazing how much less discipline you have if you're not getting the rest. And if you're not getting the rest because your blood sugar is more variable, you ate before you ate right before you went to bed, those type of things, then, the next day it's harder to do the right things. So you have to somewhere draw the line and say, I'm going to start doing what I need to do, and having a continuous glucose monitor helps that because you're able to see the numbers and you're able to see your behavior. That's why I have people write things down, because they can see actions and behavior related to their health and the things that they're doing within the 4 pillars of health. Number 6, walking after a meal helps lower your blood sugar. If I could do anything for anybody, go for a 10-minute walk after you eat. It's real simple to do. Anybody can do it. It doesn't cost you any money, and it will lower your blood sugar. And number 7, eat protein at each meal. Eat with vegetables first, and then later on, do the snacks or the carbohydrates, the breads, those type of things, if you want to have those in your diet. So those are 7 insights I have personally from wearing a continuous glucose monitor. Now, what is a good reading? Good reading is if you have a fasting blood sugar less than 100, if you have minimal glucose elevation with a meal, meaning it doesn't go to 180, maybe it goes up to 120. And then the third thing is you have a rapid return to baseline after the meal. So the spike is up and then right back down. That's a good, because That's a good result from your blood sugars, because what's happening is your body's sensitive to the insulin that it's producing from your pancreas, and it's lowering your blood sugar quickly and promptly like it should. And the fourth thing is your blood sugar is stable throughout the day. You have some up and downs like a wave throughout the daytime, but you're not going to have a 20, 30 point spike up and down all day long. It's more consistent. It's not as much variable with your blood sugar. And what's a poor blood sugar reading? Is when you have a high fasting blood sugar. Obviously, that's not good. When you have, number two is when you have a large spike after a meal. Instead of going to 120, 130, maybe it goes to 180. That's not good. Number three, prolonged return to baseline after your meal. So instead of like having a quickly up and a quickly down, you go up and then it stays up for a while and just gradually goes down over time, maybe even over hours. That's not a good sign. Number four, you have high variability during the day. So during one day, you may have a blood sugar 20, 30 points higher, then it drops to 20, 30 points lower from baseline. We're talking back from baseline. And that variability throughout the day is a sign of abnormal metabolic health. And the fifth thing is you have high variability from day to day. If you wear this for 14 days and each day is totally different and you may be eating close to the same things, then you know that there's something wrong there with your metabolic health. Hopefully this helped you guys. I think it's a very good tool to use. And again, it's just a tool. It's not something that's going to cure anything. But as we talked about before, it does cause some behavioral changes. And I think that if you can uncover some underlying metabolic problems early, then you're not going to have that problem later on, developing these chronic diseases like cancers and high blood pressure, diabetes, Alzheimer's, those type of things. You're going to have less of a chance to death, should I say, than doing it and having the blood sugars wreak havoc on your system and you not even know it for years and even decades from that point. So hopefully that's helped. If you have any questions, I'd love to have a conversation with you. We do have a 12-week course. A 12-week course is something that will help take you through this. We have options within the 12-week course to upgrade, to include things like a continuous glucose monitor, some blood work and things like that, that's able to kind of help decipher exactly what's going on with your health, so that you can make the best decisions for you as an individual for your health and not just do what the crowd does as far as different diets and exercise plans and stuff like that. So let me know if you're interested. Just reach out. You can respond to here wherever you're listening to this, whether it be on YouTube or on my podcast. Just reach out to me. I'll put a link to where you can reach out to me in the show notes. So today, let's talk about our catechisms. Today, we're going to talk about how should the Sabbath be kept. In prayer and praise, in hearing and reading God's word, and doing good to our fellow men. So the Sabbath is so important. It is mentioned throughout Scripture, 10 Commandments. It's mentioned so many times. And, again, I've had this discussion before, I think on here as well, is if God took a day to rest when he made the earth, then we could take a day of the week to rest, and not only rest, but what we're talking about here is prayer and praise. So we're not just going to sit on the couch all day. Hopefully that's the day when you go to your service, you go to worship, you go there and worship in song, you worship in word, you fellowship, and you're able to help and encourage others as you would want them to help encourage you. So I encourage you, if you are not attending church, if you're local, we'd love to have you at ours. But if not, you're local, there's good churches across the United States. Just find a good Bible-believing, God-fearing church and, check it out. If you want to have a conversation with that about us as well, reach out as well. We'd love to have that conversation with you too. Anyway, that's it for today. You guys have a fit and a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys next time.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. No patient-provider relationship is implied or established. This podcast in no way represents the practice of medicine. The information given is to be used at the listener's own risk. Please consult your provider before making any changes, as the contents of this podcast is no substitution for your provider.